Let's talk about the bolts today, guys. We're going to go over the new changes, and I'm going to introduce all the fun stuff that we've done with the Bolt V2. And if you're scratching your head and you have no idea what I'm talking about, we basically have redesigned the Bolt, and we're re-releasing it on Friday, December 14th. So just to give you some quick like a little bit of quick history on the bolt pen itself, and kind of what we did with that, and then we'll, we'll we'll move from that into the new version that we've done, and kind of give you guys um, the reasons behind it, and kind of where we're going with that pen, and a lot of our pens. It will lead to a lot of our pens. So the Bolt was the second pen that we designed and manufactured. We did the render kit initially, launched that on Kickstarter, was really successful, and had a lot of requests to do a bolt action pen. Um, but we wanted to kind of do our own take on it. We didn't want it to be exactly like everybody else's bolt action pen. Um, Kind of use what we were good at, and but also at the same time combine some of our we were just kind of working through the design language that we've grown. Um, Bill and Dan at the time were kind of building that design language portfolio. And so what we basically came up with was initially was one version, and it was just the standard Parker style refill. We didn't want it to be exactly the same as the rest of the stuff, so we had a knob and slider mechanism instead of just a slider with kind of a button that you could actuate off the side. A lot of most bolt action pins have that, where you don't really push down on anything from the top. You're actuating it from the side, whether it's a little machine button, or it's a larger screw, or what have you. You're using that mechanism to kind of make everything work. So we kind of went away from that. We did the knob and slider piece, where it was a two-piece mechanism. You had a knob that was a set screw, and actuated the slider mechanism that was inside. And we used the Schmidt EasyFlow 9000 refill, and it's kind of along the same lines as the Render K. When we released Render K, we had a Render K that was High-Tech C and also Parker style refill. Could be used in that one, and then we had the Render K that was a G2, and we've since combined those together into one version with the purpose-built spacer and some different things, a functionality adapter. Um, but at the time, we kind of separated those two because we really weren't thinking that way. I mean, we didn't even ship our pens with refills back then, because people were very particular about the refills that they use. So we kind of designed them to take specific refills, but you could then purchase the pen, get the pen, and put your favorite refill in it. So we also had the G2 version of the Bolt, which was longer due to the fact that the G2 refill is longer than a Parker style refill. And they were purpose built for those specific refills. So in the Parker style one, you really were limited to that Parker style. The Jada refill, the EasyFlow 9000, you could adapt the Fisher PR4 refill to fit in there. And then the G2 refill was really specifically built for the G2. You could use some Energel and Signal refills in there, and some of the other Euro refills, 110 millimeter refills, but it was basically kind of along those lines. And as time went on, the Bolt has become one of our best-selling pens. It's consistently in the top one or two pens that we sell. It's frequently mentioned by people. Yeah, I saw one of your Bolt pens. Even if they buy something else, chances are they found out about us because they saw somebody had a Bolt, or they saw a review of the Bolt online. So it's kind of become one of our most recognizable pens that we manufacture. And we've made some tiny tweaks and changes to it over time. We went from a flat bottom J slot to rounding the bottom of the J slot out slightly in the last manufacturing run we did, which would have been probably the beginning of 2018, maybe the end of 2017. We kind of rounded out that J slot just to make actuating it a little bit more positive, where it kind of draws you into the movement of of actuating the refill in and out. So that was and then we also went from not securing the knob in the slider to adding some Loctite when we assembled them, so that it keeps it secure. So that, because we had a lot of people that commented that their knobs were coming unscrewed and falling off, and they were losing them. And so that was kind of one of like the reasons that we ended up changing it. So every year we kind of sit down and we evaluate our product, and though we evaluate our product based off of sales, and we kind of look at the sales, that's really only a very small part of the product evaluation that we do. A lot of the product evaluation is based off of user feedback and our current manufacturing processes, and with looking at the current pen and saying, hey, is there any way that we can improve this pen? Are there things that we should have, had we had the ability and the foresight, would we have wanted to have this or have this availability? What are some of the issues we're having with the pens that we didn't know we had? So we do that at least once a year at the end of the year, right around this time. Usually it's the second or third week of December, where we sit down and kind of go through all that stuff. And then throughout the year, we kind of, as needed, right prior to a manufacturing run, if we need to do a manufacturing run, we sit down and we do the same thing, a real quick audit on the pen to see if, before Bill goes and tools up and programs the machines, he basically we kind of sit down and say, hey, is there anything that has jumped out at us about this pen that we might think about adding or subtracting, or do we want to do anything different for this manufacturing run, potentially something new to see if it's better if we do this aesthetic machining piece on it. So back in May, we sat down and did that with the Bolt because we knew we needed to do a machining run, a full manufacturing run of the bolts. We were pretty much almost all the way out of G2s, except for a few colors and some copper and brass. And we were getting really close to being out of the standard bolts. So when we sat down and talked about it, a couple things jumped out at us right away. We knew right away that we wanted to fix the two-piece knob and slider mechanism, eliminate that completely, and move to something that was more sturdy in the pen, something that was a single piece or was two pieces that were permanently fixed together, something that would fix that from coming out when it was pocket carried. And then the other thing that we really wanted to do is we wanted to make sure that the bottom barrel would not come unscrewed from the top barrel when it was pocket carried. I had a lot of feedback from users that were like, yeah, I carry it in my jeans and I'm in and out of the vehicle all day long, and by the end of the day, like, the bottom barrel has come unscrewed from the top barrel. So those were the two big things. So that was a relatively easy fix on the barrel issue. We just, because all last year we kind of worked with designing capped pens that used O-rings in different ways. We basically were like, yeah, we can totally adapt the lower barrel with a groove for an O-ring, and then basically change a little bit of the fitment of the threads on the upper barrel. And then when you thread them together, you'll require a little bit more pressure to get them to thread together, but they're not going to come unscrewed in the pocket. Then when we sat down and looked at the knob and slider issue, that whole thing, we basically, Bill and Dan worked through problem solved that, and basically came up with, we're going to remove basically going to remove or combine the knob and slider into one. So there's just going to be a post that goes all the way through up to the knob itself, and then the screw will just go directly into that post. So there won't be two pieces, it'll be one piece. It requires a deeper J slot, but it looks a little bit cooler. We've chamfered the J slot all the way around, and it kind of gives it a three-dimensional, like it falls in. Functions really well. And then we basically made the J slot even more rounded at the bottom, so when you push down on it, when you push all the way down, it pulls you into the bottom of that curve, And so when you let go, it's already moving towards the other side. So it's it helps a lot with the functionality of actuating the pen. We have a lot of customers that complain that they can't actuate it with just a thumb or one finger. They have to use two fingers to actuate it. With this design, it makes it really easy because it kind of takes you it moves you towards that type of movement where it locks into place. And when we did that, we basically realized that we could move the J slot all the way up towards the top of the pen. Almost there's not that much area in the top even left. We can move it all the way up to where the rest of our pens are knurled and seat it right there. Then you have a nice clean barrel. You don't have that J slot down further. And that actually allowed us to shrink the entire pen itself. So basically, we were able to take the G2, the Bolt G2, shrink it down and fit a G2 in the same length of pen as the old standard style Bolt. So now you have a 5.5 inch. Whereas prior, the Parker style standard Bolt was 5.5 inches. Now the Bolt V2 with a G2 refill in it is standard at 5.5 inches. And we debated about making two versions again, an even shorter version that would use the Parker style refill. But basically we abandoned that and instead decided to make this our standard size bolt, the 5.5 inch version. And then what we did is we purpose built a machined aluminum spacer and spring set and screw set that is kind of similar in design to the Render K functionality adapter, where when this is installed, it's semi-permanent. I use that term. It's kind of one of those like, what's semi-permanent? Well, it's designed to be permanent when it's in there. If you don't know what you're buying and you just find this in a store and you're like, oh, I really like that pen, and it's set up as a standard ballpoint version, then you wouldn't even know that it's not a permanent design. You'd be like, oh, this is just permanent. This is the way that it is. But it can be removed, and it literally just, the bottom of the knob has a hole in it that's a threaded hole that basically the screw for this threads into, and just a few turns and you're locked into place. You pop in your Parker style or equivalent refill and you're good to go. Basically the same exact pen now will take either the Parker style refill or the G2 refill, and you're set up to go from there. So it's a really easy process, and it was just, instead of making more parts, making another barrel that was shorter, and then that's one more piece that we have to potentially we have to inventory and have sent out, and then when you do that, it's just more pieces. And this way we have a standard bolt that's the same size, takes different refills. In the future, if we wanted to do a mini bolt, I know like a lot of people like mini bolts, we would design something externally and internally that was based around a specific refill, and we would make that our quote unquote mini bolt. But for the Bolt V2, and we're calling it the V2 with a V, version 2, this is what you're getting. You're getting a pen that can either use 110 millimeter or the Parker style refill. It will not accept a Schmidt P8126. The internal dimensions of the lower barrel are not manufactured to accept that refill, simply because we wanted to remove any type of play in the refill. We get a lot of feedback that there's tip wiggle or movement, lateral movement of the refill, and so we wanted to move that. And part of the reason it does that is the more refills that you allow a retractable pen or a bolt action pen to take, the different tolerances you have to kind of build in. And so it allows more movement. With these two being the main refills that this pen will accept, we're able to tighten our tolerances down just to those refills. And there's hardly any movement at all, in just enough to make them both work and function correctly. So that's where we're at with this pen. We've done all the different, we've sent them all out for anodize, all the initial runs. So we have brass and copper. We're going to have the tumbled aluminum, and then we're going to have a bunch of different colors: black, blue, green, gray, olive green, orange, red, tumbled aluminum. We will have silver. We had planned to have silver available for the initial launch on December 14th. That's not going to happen. We're not going to have silver until the beginning of January. I just don't have them. They didn't do them right at the anodizer. So we're going to have them redone. They won't be done in time for this initial release. The price is going to go back up. If you purchased a bolt or you've been watching the website, you will notice that our old bolts were on sale for like $40. That was basically to get rid of all the stock of those so that we could release this. The price is going back up to our standard pricing for our bolt pens, which is $70 for aluminum, $95 for brass, and $120 for copper. And when you check out, it's going to be a little bit different. There's only going to be one page. There's going to be one page. It's going to be bolt V2. And instead of, like, if you want a G2, you go to the one set, and standard, you go to the other. This is just going to be one page. And there's going to be two drop downs on the page. The first drop down is going to have your material and finish. So the drop down will have all the different colors, and then it'll have your brass and copper, all your different aluminum options, and then the brass and copper options. So you'll select from that. And then the second drop down will basically allow you to select your refill configuration. So if you're a G2 user, you'll set it up for a G2. If you're a ballpoint user, you'll select for the ballpoint, and that's how it's going to ship. It's not going to ship with a kit to switch between the two, like we do with the Retract and the Render K, because we're trying to eliminate the amount of waste, not loss, waste that we create. And so we're going to be changing all of our pens in the future, because this last year and a half, we've done a lot of kind of research with some surveys where we've asked you for feedback, our users. And what we identified was the majority of people, over 70% of the people, never switch between their preferred style of refill. So if they're a ballpoint user, they only use ballpoint refills. If they're a rollerball user, they only use G2 or another 110 millimeter refill. And actually, that's closer to, if you combine the gel rollerballs and the ballpoint refills and include Fisher Spaceman and stuff like that, that's really close to like 90 to 91% of the users are really in one of those two categories. We only have about 10% of our users, just under 10% of our users, that switch between a gel rollerball and a Parker style ballpoint. So all of the pens that we manufacture that have that multifunctionality where you can switch between different sizes of refills, where you can switch between ballpoint and rollerball, there's only like 9%, 10% of our users that actually ever use those kits that we send out in our pens. And we send out thousands of those a year, thousands and thousands and thousands of those a year. So with this pen, we're eliminating that. We're not going to ship this pen with any kind of extras at all. You're going to get the pen set up the way that you want it to be in a box with instructions and a sticker. That's it. So if you are one of those, like, 9 or 10% of people that do want the ability to switch between a rollerball and a ballpoint, we're going to sell those pieces by themselves for basically the cost of a refill and the wrench and the spring, and the shipping to get it to you. Or if you purchase it at the time, then it's gonna come with this, so you'll get free shipping with the pen. That item will ship for free with the pen, so you won't have to pay the $3 shipping for this. But if you purchase it after the fact, then you'll pay the $5 for the kit and then $3 for shipping. But I highly recommend that you just purchase the kit. If you plan on switching, purchase the kit at the time. So basically what you're really looking at is you're looking at, we really just wanted to eliminate that waste. So that's going to go away in all of our pens. After in 2019, we're going to eliminate that, because when we send those kits with the pens, people just throw them in the trash, and that's Delrin that we've machined, and plastic pieces and adapters and extra springs that people are just throwing away. And it's not really, it is about saving money, but the majority of it is about not creating extra trash. So we're really trying to cut down on the amount of trash that we produce, and that's just one that just jumped out of us when we read through and found that so many people just don't use them. That just, well, what are they doing with them? Well, they're within the box that they're just throwing into the recycle bin. Because our boxes can be recycled, they're just going to throw that stuff away. And some of those pieces can't be recycled easily, so those things are just going in the trash. So moving forward, you're going to select which type of refill you want your pen to be set up on, and you will be able to get those extra pieces. If you are one of those people that switch between, it will cost a little bit of money, but it's just basically going to be the cost of the refill. Because if you buy it set up as a Parker style refill, like if I purchase this one and set up this way, and then I basically also elect to have the wrench and the screw, or and the spring and the refill, then I'm paying just for these items. It's basically we're charging you our cost on these, and they show up, and you basically have the extra pieces to switch back and forth between the two of them. So that's kind of why we're doing it this way, and why we're doing it along those lines. And then you'll see that, like I said, going forward in 2019 with the rest of our pens. So that's kind of where we're at, guys. Like I said, December 14th, if you kind of, hopefully we'll break this up a little bit. If you're just kind of, you can skip through to get the highlights. December 14th is when we're coming out with this version, the Bolt V2. 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. We have several hundred of each material finish available for purchase at this time. And then in early 2019, we will be coming out with a couple special edition versions. More on that coming after the first of the year. We'll post up some videos that show those. But otherwise, that's what you have with the V2, kind of where we're at, why we did what we did, and where we're going with this pen, as well as some of the other pens. Look for a redesign, minor redesign on the EDK and the Retract next year, specific for adding an O-ring so the pieces don't come unscrewed, similar to this in the barrel. There won't be major stuff done, but we'll post a video on that as well when we do those changes. Otherwise, hopefully this takes care of you. If you've been looking for the Bolt and we've been out of stock and the one that you want, we're going to have them back in stock on the 14th, except for the silver. And you'll have to wait till January for those. Otherwise, guys, that's it. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, post them in the comments down below and I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. Thanks a lot.